Is this a decent framing? Oh wow, that's got the socks right. Sure. I've never filmed this far away before.
Do you want to get closer?
Okay, I'm gonna go refocus it, and then we'll do it from here. This will be the distance. Hello, people of the internet. Hello. I'm vlogging with someone else this time. That's different, isn't it? This is Emma. Do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Emma. Oh, sorry.
That was easy. List 3 interesting facts about yourself.
I used to be a YouTuber, and I'm not anymore. I like knitting, and I play Dungeons and Dragons. There you go. Those are my hobbies.
There we go. That gives you a full rounded picture of everything you need to know about Emma. A few months ago, a year ago, some time ago, you made a video called Movies That Made Me.
Yes.
And I thought that was a really good idea, so I copied her and made a video on my channel called Media That Made Me, which no one really watched. So I thought, who knows, maybe I could make this video with other people and repeat the format over and over again, and, you know, formulas are good because they mean you don't have to think.
Yes.
So I figured I would come see Emma and be like, hey, do you want to help me copy your video?
Yeah!
Yeah! So I've got 5 different categories of media, and we're going to go through and talk about the pieces of media that influenced you most as growing as a human being. In the 5 categories: film, TV show, video game, book, and influencer? It's a nasty word, isn't it? I didn't sign up for this
with the word influencer involved. Okay. You said social media personality.
I mean, I didn't know what to call it. Like, I wanted a thing that I could say in a single word that I could put in my notes.
I know what you mean.
So, let's get started with film. Tell me about your film. We've not talked about this, aside from one of them where we have, but...
The film that I chose in my head was The Hunger Games.
Okay.
Because I think it's the first thing that kind of made me think about politics. Like, I'm not particularly politically minded, but before then I would go around telling people, when I'm older I'm not going to vote because I don't care about politics and I don't want to know, which probably wasn't the best thing.
And so seeing The Hunger Games made you think, we've got to avoid this at all costs.
Yeah, like, obviously you learn history that, like, Hitler's bad and stuff like that, but, like, seeing a dystopian world with, like, a dictatorship and, like, all these people that aren't, like, because effectively what The Hunger Games is trying to show you is, like, don't be apathetic about other human beings, because, like, that's what the people in the capital are doing. They're just, like, watching these people murder each other for fun, and, like, it's a reality TV show, and they're not, like, thinking, oh, this is bad, and, like, it made me realise that that's not something that you should do.
Yeah. No, that's fair. That's really interesting, actually. So, do you think that politics is the main thing that has influenced you?
Yeah, and it also kind of got me into a lot of kind of young adult novels as well, because I read the books after that. I know we're talking about films, but I read the books after that, and that caused me to read, like, lots of dystopia over the years.
I presume most things are going to come back to books in some way to you. Yeah.
I liked how it focused on teenagers, but it didn't talk down to them. I think obviously they cast people who are not teenagers.
Yeah, I was going to say, like,
but
teenagers.
Like, they are supposed to be, like,
yeah,
probably similar to the age I was when I watched it, maybe a bit older actually.
Yeah, they're meant to be, like, what, 16?
Yeah, it's meant for teenagers to watch, and it didn't feel like it was sugarcoating anything or, like, trying to make us, like, a lot of kind of children's media particularly, back in the day, maybe not so much now, like, sugarcoated everything and was, like, not really trying to, like, engage people with stuff like that. The Hunger Games started, like, the craze of, like, actually dealing with, like, real issues in young adult novels.
Let's move on to television.
We've kind of mentioned this earlier, but my favourite TV show is Game of Thrones.
Okay.
So even though this isn't necessarily something I watched in my, like, formative years, well, I was still a teenager when I watched it, but...
And how old are you now?
I'm 20.
Okay. She was still a teenager when she watched it.
I mean, like, a young teenager. Like, I didn't like fantasy before then.
Okay.
Excluding Harry Potter.
Okay. But, yeah.
Like, I'd hated The Lord of the Rings, anything like that.
Really?
I was just like... So,
have you seen Lord of the Rings since you watched Game of Thrones?
Yes, I don't like it.
You still...
I enjoyed the Hobbit movies more.
This is so many levels of not okay.
I don't like Lord of the Rings either.
Shut up, Greg, you're not in this video.
I don't feel comfortable in this room anymore.
Game of Thrones made me realise that, there can be fantasy stories with women in them, and they can tackle interesting topics that are actually, like, relevant to the world and not necessarily, like, really distant. Like, I guess I used to think that fantasy was, like, just, like, imagination and, like, stuff that isn't that relevant. Obviously, that wasn't true, but, like, it was just kind of my first foray into that world. And now, everything in my life is to do with Game of Thrones, because I read the books, and I watch the show, and I listen to podcasts about it, and I watch YouTube videos about it, and I write tweets about it, and I'm just kind of obsessed. I actually don't like the show that much anymore.
Okay.
Well, like, I like the earlier seasons that I got into it with. Yeah, in the current story, they've just kind of gone for more fan service and, like, shock factor rather than
Wasn't shock factor always kind of a big thing for Game of Thrones?
Well, it's unexpected, but it's not necessarily, like, shock factor, if you know what I mean. Like, the plot goes places that normal story beats might not, because, like, it's trying to diverge from, like, the common fantasy plot line in a way. But that doesn't mean that just killing off a character just for the fun of it is good storytelling.
Yeah.
For a while, they built a world where you couldn't just die and come back. Like, it's not... They've changed that now. But there's a thing of, like, if a character's dead, they're dead. And they're going to stay dead, and you have to deal with the consequences of that. And I think that's actually what makes it a really good show. Like, spoiler alert, Ned Stark dies. But, like, that part of it is, like, the most impactful. Like, that literally shapes the entire series. And that wouldn't necessarily happen in something else. Like, in a lot of things, characters die, and it's sad for the people around them, and obviously that might influence who they are and what they do next, but, like, as a whole, it doesn't affect the whole world. Whereas when Ned Stark dies, literally the entire country, like, starts to crumble, and it's like, it's just so good. I love it.
So the thing that's shaped most about you is your approach to fantasy, and that, like, fantasy is now something that you find incredibly accessible because Game of Thrones sort of steered you into that world. Yeah,
and I like basically exclusively write fantasy as well.
Okay,
so
excellent.
It's affected my writing as well. Though not similar. I don't really write that kind of fantasy because it's a lot to write. George R. R. Martin spent a lot of years writing that for a reason. But yeah, the kind of concepts of, like, a kind of casual fantasy where it's like, it's based on just normal people, but, like, there are fantastical elements. That's like something
like
really
an urban
into.
fantasy kind of thing, or
Not necessarily, but it's more just that the fantastical elements aren't the main point of the story. They're just kind of a tool that's used to show, like, the themes and to allow the characters to do things. You know, and it's hard to explain.
It's like the same way that, like, Harry Potter boarding school mysteries with magic.
Yeah.
This was one that you said was going to be interesting. Videogame.
Oh, yes. Well, we were discussing this earlier, but kind of. Overwatch is my video game choice.
Okay.
Because for a really long time, I didn't... Like, this is kind of an insular one, because this video game just made me like video games, and that's the main way how it shaped my life. But I never used to like video games that much, because I played, like, Nintendo DS games and, like, phone games, but, like, they're kind of a different... Like, there's the gamer community, and then there's people who casually play games, like, when they've got friends around, or, like, on the phone when they're bored. And I was definitely in that category. Until, like, a year ago, maybe a year and a half, actually, when my boyfriend introduced me to Overwatch, and I was like, oh, this game's actually fun, and I can work hard to get better at it. Is this a hobby? I think video games kind of felt like a boy thing, and I didn't feel, like, comfortable in it, because, like, obviously it is, like, quite a gender skewed market, and it's changing, but there are a lot of games that they have male main characters, they're aimed at boys, they have, like, gross stuff that I'm not interested in. I'm not saying that girls can't be interested in them, I'm just not.
That video games have been aimed at men and made by men for such a long time that there is that kind of ingrained association with the medium as a whole.
Yeah, exactly.
But then companies like Blizzard doing stuff like they do with Overwatch, there's such a diverse range of characters.
Yeah, and it's like it's colourful, which is something I felt like familiar and comfortable with like things like Mario. They're also colourful and they're things I'd seen before.
Yeah.
And like they've got loads of female characters that are fairly diverse. And so I was like, oh, I guess this means that because they've got female characters, like they're aiming for women to maybe play this. I don't know. And also I just kind of enjoy the gameplay. Like I didn't expect to, because I get really stressed out. I think the team aspect definitely helps because I'm not on my own fighting a bunch of baddies at the same time. I'm a bit much. But I genuinely, I find it very difficult to explain why I like this game and I don't like most other games. One thing I will say with how it's shaped me is that it's just, it's made me feel more comfortable in the video game area.
Hello. Two things. One, your washing's done.
Thank you. I'll grab that.
Two, any idea where I could find like white sellotape or parcel tape?
I think mainly what it's done is it's just made me feel more comfortable seeking out other video games and maybe playing them. Like, I still kind of don't like most of them, because, again, not aimed at me, and also I'm just quite picky. But, like, for example, recently I played through an entire game in, in 2 weeks, which was called Iconoclasts, which I would have put on this list, but it hasn't really shaped me. I just really enjoyed it.
Basically, all of my experience with Overwatch has been watching the short films.
Oh, yeah.
Because I really love every one of the shorts that I've seen that's come from Overwatch. I've never played Overwatch in my life.
But you know what's really good about Overwatch? Like, there is lore, but there is no lore. So, like, you can literally pick up a controller and play it. If you've never seen a short, you don't know anything about the game, you don't know anything about the characters, who they are, you can just see their really great character design.
They're all so well characterized.
Yeah, and, like, I think that's what makes it so hard to get into some games, because, like, it feels exclusive because you have to have had like a knowledge of playing the past 3 games.
Plus so many games are sort of focused on sequels and
for example, like Kingdom Hearts. The lore behind that is so complicated and confusing. Overwatch is like the opposite, and I like that. Like, you can delve into it a bit if you want to. You can read the comics, you can watch the shorts. You don't have to. It's not important.
Yeah, but it's there if you want it.
Yeah.
So this is the big one.
Okay.
Book.
So yeah, I found this hard because I've read a lot of books, and genuinely I don't think that many of them, like, they've all shaped me, obviously, but like none of them like really slapped me in the face, stood out, because like I learned something from every book, but like none of them are like a big deal. Apart from Harry Potter, so I thought I kind of got to talk about it, even though I don't really like Harry Potter anymore. But I read all of the books about 3 times when I was younger. Though I did get into them very late, because I got into them when I was 14. Most people had already got into it by that time. And I didn't watch the films until I'd read all the books. So it was what made me a nerd, or like embrace nerd culture. It's what made me like get into fandom. It's what made me get on the internet. I had a big Tumblr thing for a while because of Harry Potter. It got me into fan fiction. It was like my whole life for a while.
I reread the first Harry Potter recently. It's really good. It is really good.
It's so well written, and like you really connect to the characters, and the mystery stuff is great. There's like so many problems with it, in like the world building is awful, and like J.K. Rowling is now going on a bit of a bender and having a bit of a mad time. I genuinely think that the problem is that the fan base, she's attracted a certain fan base. She wrote books about people who were outcast from society, who needed a home, who needed like to be brought into this magical world to find somewhere safe, and it's all about like escaping prejudice and fighting back against like people who are prejudiced. And then at the same time, she made all of her characters straight and white. I know she didn't actually, but like she also didn't not. So it's like almost like she's trying to avoid dealing with the actual issues by using it all as in metaphor instead of actually addressing the real things and the intersections that exist. I'm not saying that she should have necessarily like made the main characters gay or not white or whatever, but like it's just like she's trying to backtrack and say like, oh, these characters are gay because because the fans are all gay. They're all people who have felt like that before, like have felt like outcasts, have felt like they're not like part of society in the same way Harry did when he was in the cupboard under the stairs.
Yeah,
because he
literally
was
in the cupboard.
Yeah, but like
I'm gonna have to put that just as an out of context clip somewhere. The fans are all gay.
But yeah, so that's why those people are holding her to these standards, because they have thought like, oh, she's kind of championing these issues but through metaphor, and when she isn't actually championing these issues in real life, it feels weird. That's why I don't really like Harry Potter anymore, because I feel like it avoids these issues. But at the time I found it very relevant to my own life, and also it's a fun mystery story. And it's a really nice thing because it's got so many elements of it that makes it feel inclusive but not necessarily exclusive. And because so many people watch the movies, like so many people were part of this like club, which is why it's such a big fandom. But like you can also be like, I'm this house, and then that's a whole new level of inclusion.
What house are you?
I'm a Ravenclaw.
I'm a Ravenclaw.
Yeah!
Yes!
Nice.
The best house.
It's good.
Yeah. Greg, what house are you?
Ravenclaw.
Yes. I'm suddenly comfortable in this room again. Let's do the last category, which I didn't know what word to use for it, so in my notes I've written influencer.
Yeah, my choice for this is Dodie, which is the one we've already discussed.
We were talking about this earlier.
There were a few possible candidates for this because honestly YouTube was my main fandom for a while.
YouTube is like, it's an actual thing. It's
Because
like
saying that YouTube is your fandom is weird, because I wasn't a fan of YouTube. I was a fan of people on YouTube. It's kind of weird, and they weren't just on YouTube. They were on other social media.
yeah.
So like my YouTube journey was like Charlie is so cool, like actually, and Alex Day, but let's not.
Yeah, let's not. Let's not.
And then I went on to Dan and Phil for a long time, and it was a very embarrassing moment in my life for me.
Dan and Phil's still pretty good though.
Oh no, it wasn't their fault.
Okay, no, yeah.
My YouTube channel started out as like a fan channel for Dan and Phil.
No, my YouTube channel basically started as a fan channel for Charlie. So
Oh, there you go. That's alright then.
Yeah.
And then I kind of like moved on to being a fan of Dodie, but by that point I'd kind of like felt a bit weird about being a fangirl for like real people that aren't necessarily super duper famous, because it just feels a bit of like a strange dichotomy, and it was weird. But by that point I just thought Dodie was a really cool creator, and I followed her music and her YouTube videos, and I went to see her in a concert, and like at the time she was making a lot of videos about like the fact that she was bisexual and like mental health things and all these sorts of things that were very prominent in my life at that time as a kind of a teenager that was growing up and all that thing, that horror, and like she's a lot like me in a lot of ways. Like we share a lot of traits. I'm not gonna say them because that's weird. I'm like labeling her as a person. I don't know. But like the desire to want to put those things out online, and also like the mental health issues that I also have, and like also being bisexual myself, and like having all these like grand aspirations and things like that. Like seeing someone go through that online but like a bit ahead of me was like really helpful for me at the time, because it kind of makes you realise that life goes on after you're a teenager, and you can still deal with these issues, but they're sometimes better, and there's things you can do about it, and like it was just really helpful for me. And also she largely inspired my fashion decisions, so now I just dress like Dodie. Yellow is like my favourite colour, and I wear yellow all the time. And I went to a Dodie concert like a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, I don't know. No, it was a year ago. And I was wearing this dress, and everyone there was dressed up as Dodie. It was on Halloween as well, it was really funny. But yeah, and I was wearing this yellow dress, and like 3 people asked me where I got it, because it was literally exactly the same as one that Dodie owned.
Excellent.
So it was great.
And that's still a thing. You're obviously still a big fan of Dodie.
Yeah, she just doesn't really make YouTube videos anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
So I'm kind of just a fan of her music at this point, and I do follow her on Twitter, but I don't like kind of. It was never like obsessive, but I took more of an interest in her at one point than I do now. Like one time she commented on one of my videos, and I was like, like I've just kind of grown up a bit, I guess, and she's kind of grown apart from YouTube and things like that.
I got into her as a YouTuber first because it was before she'd released any of her albums or anything, or her
Same,
EPs.
yeah.
And I kind of didn't really like the music. I was
Really?
like, you know, I take it or leave it. I don't watch all the songs she uploads, and but then I saw her live at Summer in the City, and I was like, oh, her with the band, her with the full everything, and I
Yeah.
could appreciate her. I think it's because her voice was, well, at least it used to not be very strong.
Yeah.
It was kind of.
She has quite a quiet voice that's
Yeah.
like meant to be. It's not quite whispery, but it's that kind of.
So when it was just like that and a ukulele, I was like, this doesn't sound like anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like proper music. And then as soon as I heard her with a band, I was like, oh damn, I'm going to buy this as soon as it comes out.
Like there
And
is
then, of course, I
nothing.
did.
There's nothing that sounds better with Dodie's voice than strings.
Mm,
Like her
yes.
with a cello is just.
Yeah. My channel is basically a Dodie fan channel as well, though, isn't it? Because I've got 3 guitar lessons
Amazing.
for Dodie songs, and they are like my most viewed videos. I've got like a 3,000 views on like a guitar lesson for 6 out of 10.
At least you don't have a video called "How to Be a Fan of Doddle that has like 60,000 views.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's that many. I don't think it's that many, but it does have quite a few. Too many.
Too many.
Too many.
Too many. Too many. So this has just turned into us bonding about like being like just sort of evangelist for Dodie by accident.
Sure.
Well, not even accidentally. Dodie's pretty great.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. I believe that was the last point. Let's come up with an ending. The media that shapes us becomes who we are. There is a connection between every human on the planet because we all consume media.
Maybe we were all the influencer all along.
Yes.
And
maybe,
the influence.
maybe we made the media.
Congratulations on writing Game of Thrones. Well done.
I think that's a good ending. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more of Emma, you can go subscribe to her channel. She's technically retired from YouTube, but I have a feeling that maybe she'll come back at some point to make something for you. So go subscribe to her. If you want to see more of this video, there is a long version that's going to be going out on my Patreon pretty soon, because I have a Patreon now. Don't feel like you have to support it, but if you want to, that would be pretty cool. Like, share, and subscribe? I guess that's how you meant to end these videos, right? Yeah.